All right, happy Friday, everyone. This is MetaFairs Talk, and today we have very good topic for you guys. We have expert who is joining us, and we're going to introduce him in a second. But the topic for today is data visualization, which is obviously actually it's been key in medical affairs for quite some time, but it's definitely been gaining some traction now with social media, innovative formats, virtual reality, metaverse. So it's definitely going to be an interesting discussion today. I'm very much looking forward to kind of dissecting the topic a little bit. Just for those who are joining for the very first time, MetaFairs Talk is a monthly meeting we have on LinkedIn. We go live once a month, and we tend to cover topics that are obviously relevant to medical affairs professionals, especially when it comes to innovation and technology in medical affairs. And I guess today is really a perfect example of that kind of intersection of technology and healthcare. So as a reminder, we are very open to addressing any questions or comments you may have. So feel free to add any comments in the live chat, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So having said that, I'm Luca Dezzani with the Medical Affairs Organization at Johnson & Johnson, and Marieke.
Thank you, Luca. Welcome everybody on this Friday. The weather is getting nicer here in the Northeast, so I'm very happy that you could join us. I'm looking forward to all the comments. I'm very interested hearing from our special guest, Kevin Miller. And before I hand it over, my name is Marieke Jonkman, and I'm from the Medical Affairs Leadership Institute. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My name is Kevin Miller. I'm the Senior Vice President of Creative and Medical Science at Red Nucleus. I've been with this company for a little more than 20 years at this point in time, with a background as an undergraduate degree in biochemistry and a master's degree in biomedical communication. And we started as a company many years ago under the name In Vivo Communications, really focusing on delivering visuals in a way that the pharmaceutical industry really had not seen much of before. We started as an animation studio, delivering 3D in compelling formats and things like that. And as we evolved, we started to layer in interactive media and a lot of next generation technologies as a way of being able to deliver those new types of solutions and really digitally transformative solutions that help to ensure that our clients were always getting the best kind of products possible. So really excited to be with you today to talk about data visualization, metaverse, mixed reality, things like that as well.
Yeah, so why don't we start from some of the basics? Again, I'm pretty sure that our audience is, for the most part, familiar with the concept of data visualization, what that is, why it's been utilized, and why it's important in medical affairs. But maybe you can just give us a, short overview of what data visualization is, what it's been used for, and why again a medical affairs professional should be looking into and perhaps again partnering with experts like yourself to make sure they have a good data visualization strategy as part of their medical affairs strategy.
Sure, no problem. So I mean, in its basic form, data visualization really refers to the ability to communicate insights with data through visual representation. And you can approach it in many different ways, but really it's about taking or distilling large data sets into visual graphics or 3D representations that make that content more intuitive, more memorable, and really to try and provide a better understanding of complex relationships that exist within data. It really helps us to draw conclusions around the world around us and looking at that data in ways that we otherwise would have difficulty. And why is it so important that we talk about this as a topic? And it's because we live in a world in which we are exposed to technology all the time. And it is estimated that at this point in time, we're consuming about 34 gigabits of content every single day. And as we spend more time with that technology, that number is going to continue to increase. And a lot of the data within healthcare is actually not structured. So whether that's looking at things like lab results or medical images or medical transcripts, we know that we're going to have to find ways of being able to tell that story, to be able to put it into a format that gives people an opportunity to respond to it. And the amount of data that's in healthcare is going to continue to grow year over year over year. So we better solve this challenge. We better find ways of making sure that whatever it is that we're trying to explain, to share, to show is something that's compelling, that it's memorable, and it gives people an opportunity to react to it in a way that helps to inform the decisions they're making clinically regarding products as well.
I see a very interesting comment from Steve coming up about, how clinicians are getting more and more data, which aligns with what you just said, and how visualization can help bring the message across. I also read, a little while ago that we're actually from the whole data set are using so few of the slides that was in this particular case. How can we enhance that we use more and get more of an impact with clinicians?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways that we can take data visualization and apply it as a way of being able to increase that memorability and that engagement with it. And there's lots of different approaches. We can use things like the development of an interactive tool like a dashboard. So giving people that opportunity to present data that might be very large or cumbersome and highlighting relationships that exist that would otherwise be very different or difficult to be able to see. You can do that through adding things like layers or filters or isolating information from multiple data sets, all in one package, all in one sort of viewer, which really helps to put the user in control and give them the ability to isolate that information that's most important. We can take large volumes of data that exist maybe as text or slides and be able to pull them into infographic information as well. So we're consolidating multiple statistics or facts or data points and bringing them into a single engaging image that makes it much more engaging, makes it more memorable. And when you pair that with elements within design like color, icons, things like that, you can really take what's otherwise very complex and distill it down into something that makes it much more consumable. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be able to leverage that with specifically in medical affairs. I mean, we're dealing with increasing volumes of data on a regular basis.
And I'm just curious because, of course, you have already mentioned a few different things, including images, infographics, videos. When you think of the different formats, and I'm sure you're working on a variety of different media and formats. I'm just wondering, especially thinking that right now probably the social media platform that is the most kind of active and trending is TikTok, and this whole idea of few seconds or less than a minute video is really gaining more and more traction. That combined with this whole idea that the average attention span has been shrinking over time. I'm just curious, what, based on your experience and your work these days, what are the formats that you see are gaining more traction, and maybe those that are maybe not so being utilized anymore?
Yeah, so where that all comes from is really around adult learning principles. And that's this idea that adult learners are usually independent learners who can apply information, they want to apply information immediately after they've consumed it to problems or challenges they have in real life. And one of the challenges we have with that is that lack of time. I mean, everybody has got challenges with being able to find the right amount of time to be able to look at information, to be able to make decisions. So being able to structure content in bite-sized chunks is really important. And we need to make sure that whatever solutions we're putting out there grab the learner's attention from the onset, and that they use visually compelling materials to keep people engaged, and it's in a clear and concise manner. And so personalizing that information, personalizing those pieces of data in a way that really resonate with them is so important. So where do we end up seeing it used? So we talked about this idea of a dashboard, so personalized dashboards that allow people to monitor what's important for them. So we all have tools where we're able to bring forward information that tells us a little bit about how we aggregate that information. this information or these data pieces can also be embedded into platforms and applications that you use daily. So it can be things like social media. It can be even within the medical space, things like detail aids or websites. So we're ultimately taking that content, splitting it apart into those bite-sized chunks and delivering it in a way that really hits that audience where they are, when they are. We also do a lot of work that's related to medical animation and videos, and we know that you can have data visualization embedded in those animations or embedded in those videos. And it's a really great way of quickly being able to accurately convey information to the viewer. It's also ideal in live presentations. So you can have real-time interactive charts that ultimately allow us the ability, much like we are in this forum here, to respond to user queries or information. So imagine a symposium or a P2P meeting where someone asks something and they want a specific response to a piece of information. It allows us to be able to get to that point much more quickly. So data visualization has a lot of power in being able to deliver on some of those new social media platforms or some of those ways that we now communicate in this digital era.
And I'm again going to the comments because we're getting another really great comment about data visualization, but the importance of ensuring that data visualization doesn't emphasize a point more than what the data actually is, or that you're inferring a relationship that isn't proven yet or real. So how can we be thoughtful about how we present it, and not just the data itself, but also the person who's presenting it?
Yeah, I think that element really around accuracy is key to this. We don't want to tell a story about data that doesn't exist. What we can do is we use the data as that sort of the Bible, that source of truth, and ultimately pull forward the information that it's sharing and that it can tell us. The goal for data visualization is not to create a new narrative. It's not to take something that doesn't exist and be able to present that forward. It's really around the honesty that exists within the data to say, the human brain can't comprehend maybe these huge, large data sets that all exist, but what it can do is show relationships that exist that might otherwise not be capable of easily being pulled forward. It might be able to take something that's really hard to explain using text and turn it into something through 3D or through some sort of an animated graphical element that makes that change in time or the activity of something obvious. So I think that's a really important point, is to make sure that whatever we're doing solution-wise, we're holding true to the fact that the data is that first source of truth, and it ultimately supports the narrative that data is ultimately providing to us.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, and I'm sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. When I think of something that can be, I think I'm sure you guys have seen some of those short videos on different social media where you have things like the top 10 car manufacturer over time, right? And you see all these bar charts that change, and you see how 10 years ago it used to be XYZ, and then over time X became insignificant and Y became the top one, and so on and so forth. So if you think about it, it's a very simple concept, right? And the data per se, it's very, very basic, right? However, if you think of showing and presenting that kind of data in a table format or in any other formats for that matter, would be really complicated, right? Whereas when you see those charts moving, it's very immediate, it's very easy to understand. It's actually even entertaining, because then you see how it's almost like a race, right? That you see how things have been changing over time. Again, very different space, completely different topic, but that to me is an example of something that very kind of data visualization can make it very easy to interpret and understand for anybody. So I guess my question is, do you have maybe one or two examples of something like that, again, without necessarily going into products or specific projects you worked on, but just a couple of examples of something that has really been that kind of aha moment that you share the data and people get it.
Yeah, so you're right. You're right on the money with that. Progression over time is one of the best uses for data visualization. It allows people to very quickly see changes that occur either within a period of time related to population or location or even response, maybe to a drug. So we have data visualization tools that we've developed, and a lot of times what we're doing is we're feeding in that clinical data, and it allows us that ability to be able to very quickly show things like safety or efficacy in a format that when that's being shared between an MSL and an HCP who's ultimately engaging with that content, that change over time is something that's very quickly being able to be relayed to them. It's a lot easier than looking at a graph or a table where you're seeing numerical values. When you see a graph that jumps or dives depending on whether or not that relationship increases or decreases, I think your mind remembers that, and ultimately you're able to resolve that and make better maybe clinical decisions based on that as well. So that's how we typically are using it with our clients. We're also using it as being able to tell those MOA stories. We're able to bring that data that ultimately is supported from the efficacy piece to life in different ways as well. So it's all part of this like complex way of visualizing that story that ultimately supports the underlying data that sits behind everything.
So now I want to jump to the future. So we know where we are now. We're interactive. We're using it, but this can become very much more interactive, and we can jump into the metaverse and VR. Can both of you tell me your vision on how this is going to evolve over the next couple of years?
Sure. Luca, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Maybe I could just say, about the need, and then you can say something about, what you guys have been working on. I mean, clearly there is, we've been speaking about omni-channel now for a few years, right? In medical affairs, and obviously VR and potentially kind of the bigger concept of the metaverse can be one of those channels, and most likely it will be one of the channels we are going to be utilizing. The reality is, based on my experience right now, we are probably only scratching the surface there. I do have very limited experience. I can probably count on one hand the real actual utilization of virtual reality in medical affairs, besides having a VR headset at the conference booth where you show the MOA that instead of being a video is just something 3D or fancy, right? That one example aside, I can really count on probably one hand other more sophisticated examples I have experience with. So again, I totally see the need. I totally see why there is so much interest. I guess, Kevin, I would really love to hear from you again, any, good examples like best practices that you can share, or maybe, or it's not necessarily either or, and maybe where you see that field evolving in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk a little bit about the metaverse, and then I'll probably switch over and talk a bit about artificial intelligence, because I think both of those are going to be aspects that ultimately carry us into the future. So, the metaverse really doesn't refer to any one specific type of technology. It's really a broad shift in how we're interacting with technology. And that can include virtual reality, where we're in a persistent virtual world that doesn't exist, or it can be augmented reality, where we're combining aspects of the real world with digital world. And it can also be delivered through things like traditional screens or consoles, like things like Fortnite or Minecraft. And there's a lot of hope that this could someday be a part of a new digital economy where users can buy and create and sell new goods. I mean, that's where we probably heard the word metaverse being used much more so recently. But what we know is for the VR space and the AR space that we've been operating in, there's a lot of different great use cases that exist out there. And one of the primary ones that we've developed a number of programs for around training and simulation, putting people into scenarios that in the real world would not allow you that ability to fail safe in a space that would otherwise allow forgiveness to say, you've made an error, let's go back and try that again. You don't get that opportunity in the real world. So VR is very good for that. It's great for things like empathy, where we're putting an HCP into the shoes of their patients, or education, like you mentioned, around training on a novel MOA or a specific pathology. But I think where the metaverse really comes into play is that idea of remote collaboration or social interactions. So it's putting colleagues or people into this same space where they have an opportunity to share their thoughts, to explore. There's a lot of great opportunities here. It could do things like speed up drug development and improve collaboration between teams or departments. They might look at how an MSL interacts with HCPs based on personalized information or interactions, because they go into this space and they can pull up that relevant content really quickly. It can serve as a platform for a virtual conference, or house this virtual library of resources that people can come into and really engage with that compelling content, or even delivery of things like peer-to-peer programs in a way that they've never seen before. We can even look at it from how we deliver clinical trial programs. Everything from recruitment to patient monitoring could change by using the metaverse as this platform that we ultimately use to bring people into this space. So you can increase enrollment because you have better access to people wherever they are in the world. It might be easier for follow-up. You're not asking people to come in. You're able to talk to them in this metaverse environment. And you could develop this community around the trial that exists in this space as well. So, the metaverse, I think, is going to be something that very much evolves over the next little while. And I think paired with that is this idea around the future of artificial intelligence. And we know that we talked about earlier the fact that data is growing at this exponential rate, and that's very much true within pharma. And it can be helpful in identifying things that would otherwise be hidden to the human eye. So we can use things like a machine learning algorithm to be able to compare in some sort of environment like that, identify anomalies, or it can detect insights and things like that as well. We can use natural language processing to convert information that we get from some of these environments and turn it into plain language summaries or other types of communication pieces. In fact, one of the technologies that we've been looking at more recently is something called BioGPT, and it's an AI that allows it allows you to look at information that's been published on PubMed, and it's really helpful for clinical support. So it scans and reviews millions of pieces of information that are research articles on PubMed, and it can answer clinical or biomedical answers by going through that information and providing responses that are really important. And then being able to take that and represent that visually, maybe back into a metaverse environment, so people can design better drugs, can do things like that. I think that's where our future is. I think that's where we're going to be in the next number of years, relying on these technologies to help us to deliver much better care for patients and speeding up the time it takes to be able to develop those drugs that are so important to patients and healthcare professionals.
So now I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but and obviously I'm so happy that you actually brought up the kind of generative AI into the discussion, because of course that's the talk of the town these days. I think everyone is curious to see how they can possibly integrate ChatGPT within medical affairs at some point, and people tend to think usually of how they're going to summarize scientific literature and other things. But I love this particular angle of also using generative AI for data visualization. If you had to make a wild prediction, right? If you had to make a wild prediction about the future and the application of generative AI within the kind of your area of expertise within data visualization, what would that be? First of all, is it a good one or a bad one? Meaning, do you see a dramatic uptake? And I think based on what you are saying, I can see you're a believer, but what's your prediction there?
So I do think it's going to be a positive influence. I know there's a lot of fear out there right now around, what this is going to do and how it's going to disrupt different industries and jobs that it might take over. But I see this as being a tool that will ultimately help to support decisions. So, for instance, it might be that within our team, we're looking at medical writers who now, rather than sifting through hundreds of articles to find information that's important, they can find that information using ChatGPT to go in and ultimately say, find me all the information that's related to publications in the last year that are related to this therapeutic area, or this type of information that we really want to look at and concentrate on. For our animation team, it might be around using new tools like Dream Fusion or Blockade Labs to develop on-the-fly virtual environments that are reflective of a real-world environment that a physician might have if they're in the surgical suite, and being able to simplify that workflow so that we can deliver programs more quickly and more accurately. So I think we have to look at this the same way we've looked at other technologies that, I would consider still part of that Wild West, where we're still learning about them, is that they will ultimately help to provide us with the information we need to make better decisions, to speed up and make our the work that we do more efficient. And I really do think that as we look at visuals and the way we're delivering material, these types of platforms are going to help to supplement that and develop a way of being able to make our programs more effective, more accurate, and more quickly delivered and into the field in a faster time frame, so that they can get to the people that it matters to most.
Awesome. Now, thank you, Kevin. I think we are reaching the top of the hour. I really appreciate all of your insights, and also, some of this kind of forward-looking component around applying artificial intelligence to data visualization. I think it's super exciting. I personally think has a huge potential. So thank you for your time today. And I just want to remind everyone that our next MetaFairs talk is scheduled for May 19th. We are still going to be speaking about innovation in medical affairs. So it's still going to be around technology and how that's being applied in the medical affairs space. So looking forward to seeing you there. Again, thank you, Kevin. And Marieke, any final remarks?
Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Kevin. I learned a lot today. I'm excited to see where the future brings with VR and our generative AI.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.